All right, welcome to Wednesday Night Live, presented by Pioneer Baptist Church. My name is Pastor Edwin Lugo, and as it is every night, I will be your host tonight. And it is good to see some of you on here, a few of you here on Facebook, a few of you here on YouTube. I'm going to give you just a minute to get on. I know for some of you, you got out of the groove of it last week, but we're back into it this week. Thank you for joining us. Good to see the Millers, the Harts, the Claytons, my own family, and glad that you guys are here tonight. If you're hopping on, let us know you're here. I know we got a couple people working. I know the Tuckers are out of town, which makes it all the more important that if you are watching right now, and especially if you're on a phone or a computer, that you interact with us tonight, because these things always go much smoother and much better with your input. So, we certainly want it. Along with that, we have a few different segments tonight that we haven't had in the past that are also going to need your interaction, and also have something very special to show you, something for us to pray about together as a family. I do not know this for certain, but I'm going to guess that one of my children downstairs is Goosey, and I don't know what they put on there. It almost looks like a phone with somebody waving hi on there, but I'm not sure. Although, Goosey could be somebody, I don't know, but if I were a betting man, which I'm not, I would guess it belonged to one of my children downstairs. Hey, Anita, good to see Anita on here as well. We're just giving a few moments for people to hop on here and let us know they're here with you. If you're just now getting on, let us know. We love whenever we have a lot of you joining in here. I'm going to try to keep up with the comments here as best I can. But we are glad you're here. We're not going to wait too long. As you can see right up. Is it here? Let me see. I'm going to wait until my hand moves. Is it? I'm not sure if it's this way or not. Maybe it's this way. This way here. The fact of the day. Yep. See, I got it wrong. This way. The fact of the day is we're jumping right into the fact of the day. You say, wait a second, that's a little bit different than what it has been in the past. Today's fact of the day, really quickly, just something for you to hold on to think about, that may be of interest to you at some point, is this. I thought this was interesting. Did you know that an elephant drinks the equivalent of 800 glasses of water a day? That is a lot of water. And that is, I'm guessing, going to the bathroom a lot. I'm sure their bladders are bigger than ours too, but still, that is a whole lot of water. 800 glasses of water a day. That is kind of crazy. Did you know that? Did you not know that? I know elephants. We see elephants, around water. They drink water. They're usually around watering holes. But man, I don't know if that's a 12-ounce glass. That's what, 96,000 ounces of water? No, not 9,600 ounces of water. 9,600 ounces of water. That's a lot of water. But maybe somebody else wants to try the math there too, and let me know what it is. Again, if you're joining in, let me know, because we love you to be here. We also have a question of the day. This is brand new. We've never done this before. We have done Would You Rathers before, but a question of the day is not something we've ever done before. So this is the very first one, and we want your input. I want to know what you're thinking. This is today's question of the day. So put your thinking caps on. Get ready to answer. Let us know what you think. Ready? Here it is. Here is today's question of the day. What is something you think you could teach people? So if it's a classroom setting, there are a bunch of people in there, and they say, hey, you got 30 minutes or an hour, and you need to teach these people something. Something. What do you think that you could teach somebody? So the Claytons are chiming in and said that's apparently about 100 gallons of water. 100 gallons of water a day. That's crazy. That's crazy. That is a lot. A lot of water. But here's the question. We want to hear your answer. What do you think? We want everybody to give us some sort of answer. If you had to be put in a classroom somewhere and they said, all right, you got 45 minutes, you got an hour, you got to teach these people something. What subject, and you could choose anything really, what subject do you think you could fill up 45 minutes, an hour worth to teach people? What is something you think you could teach people? Let me know in the comments. Let's see here. Okay, so Azariah wants to know age group. Let's say let's say high school through and up, high school and through adults, all right? So it's not constant questions about, are you married? Do you have a cat? Do you have a dog? What's your favorite color? It's like high school and up. Okay, so that's a good one. So there you go. Cassie says it would be something cooking related. Okay, yep, I agree. She could, and that's a good one too because with all the prep work and everything, you could take up some time doing that. So that's a good one too. Katie says the ABCs are how to count to 10. That's a lot of practice if you're going to fill up 45 minutes or an hour. Okay, Terry says eschatology. So, the doctrine of the end times would be something interesting for people to sit in on. Let me know. Keep answering in the comment section if you're here with us. Something you think, maybe some of you already are teachers like Anita. I'm thinking you could just say piano, right? I teach somebody piano for an hour. Katie says she'll teach people all they need to know about having curly hair. All right, Clayton's chime in here and say how to bake. Again, that's a good one because you can take the time to measure stuff out and mix it together and talk about it and then bake. Katie also says lesson number 1 on playing the violin. True. Terry Cross chimes in and says logos, whatever you want to call it. The Bible software program. That's true too, and you could fill up loads of lessons teaching people how to use that. There's no doubt about that. Hey, Abby could teach about chickens. That is very, very true. I could teach about how to eat chickens. I like grilled chicken. I like fried chicken. I like chicken eggs. I'm just kidding, Abby. I like to give you a hard time about eating chickens. Just not yours, especially not the ones you named. We wouldn't do that. Wouldn't want to do that. Anyway, she could teach about chickens. Let's see here. Raising a toddler. That's true. Necessary tools to keep your sanity. Katie also chimes in with. Terry Cross mentions music theory. Colleen says basic taxes. Yeah, basic. I hear that because that some of that stuff can get really, really complicated. Josiah says how to open a door. That's, again, 45 minutes or an hour of how to open a door. That's going to go by fast. Really fast. All right. If you have any other ones, put them in the comment section. I'd love to hear them. Things you can teach people. And by the way, now you're looking and going, man, I've always wanted to know how to open a door. I've always wanted to know music theory. I've always wanted to know about chickens. I've always wanted to know how to do these things. Well, now here you go. You got some people who can possibly teach you something you didn't even ever know. There you go. A new segment as well today is our joke of the day. All right, you ready for a joke of the day? This really got me thinking here because since I've been home, we've had this giant book of jokes that have been sitting down in our living room, and I try to get Kanan to read it to me all the time and tell me a bunch of good jokes, and he doesn't think they're very good, but I enjoy them and like laughing at them, and so I thought, you know what? A joke of the day would be something good, especially, I don't know, maybe you haven't laughed much today and you need to laugh today. Azariah chimes in and says he could teach introduction to guitar. Again, that would be something cool to learn, but here is the joke of the day. I'm going to give you an opportunity to even answer the joke of the day. Ready? Here it is. Joke of the day. Why did the Scarecrow win an award? Now, no cheating, no Googling, nothing like that, no cheating. Anybody have an answer for why did the Scarecrow win an award? Think about that for a second. Put on your thinking caps. Hum the Jeopardy theme song. And I'll answer. So I'll look at some of these other comments while you guys are doing that. Azra says he could teach on the book of Jonah. That's true. That'd be a good one to do in that short time span there. So that would be good. Anybody answer with an answer? Why did the Scarecrow win an award? I'll give you 10 more seconds, and then I'm going to answer for you. Okay, Katie says for the number of crows he's scared. Oh, that's not quite it. That's not a joke. It's a riddle. No, it is a joke. It is a joke. Ready? And here it is. The Clayton's got the right answer. It is because he was outstanding in his field. Get it? He was outstanding in the field. Scarecrow. He was outstanding in his field. Boom, psh. I'm sure my children and wife are cracking up downstairs because it was an excellent joke. Being the stillest person, Katie says, that's a good one too for the award he wins. But he wins the award because he's outstanding in his field. There you go. Yeah, see, some of you guys got it, got the joke. Hey, in future episodes, possibly, maybe you got a really good joke. We could don't put it in the comment section because then everybody see it, but you can text it to me, send it to me, and maybe we can include it sometime in the future. Really quickly though, before we jump into 3rd John, and I know we've done this a lot over, especially about the last year or so, but something for our church family to pray about. Yesterday, in about a 2 or 3 hour span, I had about 3 people text me, and 3 or 4 different individuals text me and say, "Hey, Pastor, have you seen this?" And this is this. There is this building, this church building, that is for sale. It's in Canby. It's almost right in the center of town. It is currently the what is referred to as the Canby Chapel. I want to say it's like Performing Arts Center. So they hold concerts and those kinds of things there. It is not a huge building. These are the inside, some pictures of the inside of the auditorium there. But there is some space. There's this main auditorium. Looks like there's a room back there in the back. There's a room that's attached to the on the front side of it. I'll show you a couple other pictures there. This is kind of from the stage as well, and it's an older building, but they've kept good care of it, and it's currently for sale. I'm trying to be able to go look at it tomorrow. And so who knows? It's just another opportunity that we want to pray about, and if it's the Lord's will, that He would work those things out, and if it's not, that He would make that abundantly clear as well. But it was just kind of funny and interesting. Like I said, in about a 2 hour span, I had 3 or 4 people text me and say, "Hey, Pastor, have you seen this? Hey, Pastor, have you seen this? Hey, Pastor, have you seen this?" And and so I appreciate a lot of people jumping on it right away. And kind of trying to help us out as much as possible to to be able to find buildings if we possibly need them. So something for you to pray about there, and we would greatly appreciate that. If you happen to have a copy of God's Word, I want to encourage you to go to the 3rd book of John, the 3rd epistle, I guess I should say. Would technically, I guess, be the 4th book of John. You got John, then you got 1 John, 2 John, 3 John. The 3rd epistle of John, and that's what we're going to look at today. Both it appears in English and especially in the Greek that it was written in. The 3rd epistle of John is the shortest book of the Bible. In our English language, it has 14 verses, but by word count, it is the shortest book of the Bible. If you remember a couple of weeks ago, 2 John was all about holding to the truth and being aware of false teachers. Okay? 3 John still encourages allegiance to the truth, but the struggle that John is helping people get through or warning people about is with forces not from outside the church, but forces inside the church. And oftentimes, those battles can be the most devastating ones. I've shared this story before, and I think if you've been around Pioneer long enough, you know my heart. You know that I love you and that I care about you. But one time I had a teenage girl do an interview with me, and she said, "Hey, and this was when I was a youth pastor. She said, "What's your favorite thing about your job?" And I said, "The people. I love the opportunity to minister to people and be with the people." All of those kinds of things. And then later on she said, "What's your least favorite thing about your job?" And I sat there for a long time and I thought, and I went, the people. Because sometimes the people are the biggest blessings, but they can also sometimes bring the biggest heartache. And that's true in almost every area of life. And somebody said, where people are, there will always be problems. But also where the people are, there's always the potential for solving problems. And so that we praise the Lord for that. And the important question that we need to ask ourselves, and this is what was happening in 3 John, there were some people within the church there that were causing some real struggles. And the question that we constantly need to ask ourselves is, am I part of the problem or am I part of the solution? Am I part of the problem or am I here to help? I want you to notice as we read here in just a minute that the number of times words like testified or borne witness or report or reported or bear record or record, all of these words are important words in this book because they talk about a person's testimony, right? They talk about how somebody has acted and how people have seen their testimony play out. And this is the reality. The reality is our words and our actions either help or hinder the truth. Because again, just like in 2 John and just like in 3 John, John is encouraging allegiance to the truth, walking in the truth and living in the truth and abiding in the truth and all of these kinds of things. But what we need to understand is that our actions and our words can either help or hinder the truth. And we got to make sure that we're always on the side of helping. And what we're going to do really quickly is we're going to look at 3 people that are mentioned here in these 14 verses, and we're going to note what kind of Christian or what kind of church member they were, and think about what we want to be. The first one is a man by the name of Gaius, okay? And we're going to read verses 1 through 8. And as we do that, this is the first question I want you to think about. When we read these first 8 verses, I want you to try to describe Gaius in one word. After all of these things that we read, what is one word that you would use to describe him after reading these 8 verses? Here we go. Ready? Or we're going to read together. The elder unto the well-beloved Gaius, whom I love in the truth. Beloved, I wish above all things that thou mayest prosper and be in health, even as thy soul prospereth. For I rejoiced greatly when the brethren came and testified of the truth that is in thee, even as thou walkest in the truth. I have no greater joy than to hear that my children walk in truth. Beloved, thou doest faithfully whatsoever thou doest to the brethren and to strangers, which have borne witness of thy charity before the church, whom, if thou bring forward on the journey after a godly sort, thou shalt do well, because that for his name's sake they went forth, taking nothing of the Gentiles. We therefore ought to receive such, that we might be fellow helpers to the truth. If you have a copy of God's Word there, you can look through those 8 verses again. But here is the question I want you to think about. And there's not necessarily a wrong, I mean, obviously if you put like something like hateful or devilish, that would be a wrong answer. But read those 8 verses. You heard me read those 8 verses. What's a word that you would use to describe Gaius, especially his relationship to John? How do you think John feels about, or what do you think he would label? If somebody said, give me one word to John, say, hey, John, give me one word that describes Gaius, what word do you think he would use? And I'm going to, here in just a minute, point out some things about who Gaius is, but I'm giving you an opportunity to type out an answer here, and I'm glad to have more of you join us here, both on Facebook, hey Adam, as well, and some of you on YouTube joining in on us as well. The Claytons jump in and give us 2 different ones. Honest and faithful, right? And boy, it sounds like, as we're going to see in a rough situation, man, having somebody that's honest and faithful is a huge blessing. Adam noticed that he referred to him as beloved, which he also did in 2 John. He referred to some of those other people as beloved. They were dear to his heart, right? Think about, keep going, answer some other ones. I haven't gotten any answers yet on YouTube, and I'm not sure if that's because nobody's answered, if it's just frozen over here. But whether you're on Facebook or YouTube, type out some answers there. A word that you would use to describe Gaius. Let us know what you think. I'm waiting on some of those. I'm gonna while you're doing that and typing, I'm gonna read again some of these things here. He says, in verse 4, he says, "For I rejoiced greatly." In verse 4, he says, "I have no greater joy." In verse 6, he says, "Which have borne witness of thy charity." wanted to point out some of those words, and I'm still waiting for some answers. You people on YouTube, or either you're answering and I'm not seeing them, or you guys cut out after joke of the day. What's a word that you would use to describe Gaius? Right now we have honest, we have faithful, we have beloved. What's a word you would use to encourage to describe him? Come on, folks. I know you're out there. I know you can answer. One word, just one word, any word. Nobody. It's gonna be one of those nights. I'm just gonna teach right through it all. We need your help. Sometimes I have to I'll refresh a feed, because sometimes it's like, oh, so I hope that didn't cause a problem on YouTube. If it caused a problem on YouTube, come over to Facebook and let me know. Yeah, it looks like we're still good. I'm still just waiting for somebody to answer. Anybody. Hopefully when it comes back, they'll have... Still looking. All right, here we go. All right, we've got some now. The Hearts mentioned fruitful. Terry Cross mentions a person of integrity. I think when John, and all of these things are true. All of these things are things that are accurate and true about who Gaius is. But I think when John thinks about Gaius, his heart is encouraged. He's encouraged by Gaius because of his honesty, because of his faithfulness, because of his fruitfulness, because of his integrity. Again, especially in that situation, man, I'm sure John is really encouraged by what Gaius is doing in this situation. Notice what it tells us about him in verse 2. It says, "Beloved, I wish above all things that thou mayest prosper and be in health, even as thy soul prospereth." Now, in verse 2, I think verse 2 gives us a clue as to why John is encouraged by Gaius. What do you think that is? Again, just in verse 2, what is a good quality that we see here in Gaius? I want you to think about this for just a minute, okay? What is a good quality that we see in Gaius in verse 2? And I'll read the verse again. He says, "Beloved, I wish above all things that thou mayest prosper and be in health, even as thy soul prospereth." Now think about John. He may be a son in the faith. It sounds like that's the case. Maybe he helped establish this church. I'm sure he cares deeply about it. What is something that would be an encouragement to John, or a good quality about Gaius here that we see specifically in verse 2? And I'm going to have a follow-up question to this here in just a second. And this is not a trick question. It's right there in the text at the very end, right there at the end of verse 2. What does it tell us about him? And by the way, this would be an encouragement to any pastor, any preacher. Cassie mentions that he's growing spiritually. Exactly. The thing that can be so encouraging to John is he says in verse 2, he says, "As thy soul prospereth." His soul was prospering. He was growing spiritually. It actually sounds like he might be hurting physically for some reason, that there might be some sort of physical issue there, because John says, "I wish above all that thou mayest prosper and be in health." It sounds like he's talking about physical health. "Even as thy soul prospereth." He says, man, you're doing great spiritually. I hate to hear that things aren't going so good for you physically, but your spiritual health is encouraging to me. The follow-up question is, just in a very practical sense, how do we maintain good, or how do we grow good spiritual health? And Terry Cross brings up a good point. He says it sounds like John knows more about the spiritual life of Gaius than he does his physical life. Or it actually could, it could be that he knows a lot about both of them. He knows that he's growing spiritually, and he knows that physically he's not doing so hot. But that very well could be the case. That that it sounds like he's very in tune with his spiritual growth, and I'm sure that's an encouragement to John, no doubt about it. But in a very practical sense, what are some very basic ways that we in 2021 can maintain and grow in our own spiritual health? You can write some of those things out. Maybe things that you do that you know are always helpful. They were always stimulus or stimuli to your own spiritual health. What are some things that maybe you would encourage other people to take part in or to do to grow in spiritual health? Put those things in the comments for us. We're going to keep looking at Gaius here in just a minute, but I'd love to see some of those practical things from you today. Let us know in the comment section. I'll wait for that. Anybody have anything? Something that's helpful for your own spiritual growth. Again, this doesn't have to be groundbreaking. It doesn't have to be novel. What are just some basic things that you can do? Cassie mentions regular church attendance, daily Bible reading, time with godly friends or encouraging friends. So those are some things that are very, very helpful in that way to help you grow spiritually. If you have other ones, write them in the comments. We'd love to hear about them. Let's read verses 3 and 4 together as well. Because I'm going to ask again, what's a good quality we see about Gaius here in these verses? Verses 3 and 4, it says, "For I rejoiced greatly when the brethren came and testified of the truth that is in thee, even as thou walkest in the truth. I have no greater joy than to hear that my children walk in truth." So in these, and this is again a very obvious answer, what's the good or positive quality that John points out about Gaius in verses 3 through 4? The Claytons are mentioning some other things, just having a regular devotional life, talking with other Christians about spiritual truths, testifying with other believers about what God is doing in your life. These are all things that can help maintain good spiritual health and be encouragement in your spiritual growth. As we turn again the page to verses 3 through 4, what is the good quality we see about Gaius in verses 3 through 4? And some of you hit on it earlier, but let me know. If you notice it stand out to you again, I'll read verses 3 through 4 out loud. It says, "For I rejoice greatly when the brethren came and testified of the truth that is in thee, even as thou walkest in the truth. I have no greater joy than to hear that my children walk in truth." Cassie mentions walks in truth. Notice what he says, though, and I'm going to emphasize some words here. Ready? It says, "For I rejoiced greatly when the brethren came and testified of the truth that is in thee, as thou walkest in it. I have no greater joy than to hear that my children walk in truth." The hearts mention that he abides in truth. And here's the awesome thing. The fact that he walks in truth and abides in truth was clearly evident to other people. So guess what that means? That means that Gaius had a good testimony. It wasn't just, it was that he walked in truth, and it was that he abided in truth, and it was that he was truthful, but it wasn't just to a select group of people. It wasn't just known to John. People noticed. He had a good testimony. And it's important for us to have a testimony of truth. And it's important for us to, and by the way, these things are tied together. If our spiritual health is right, then our testimony can be right as well. Somebody one time said, what digestion is to the body, meditation is to the soul. And so it's important for us to meditate on, to walk in, to abide in the truth. That's going to nourish, when we digest food, that nourishes the body. But when we walk in truth, we abide in truth, we read truth, we meditate on truth, that's going to nourish the soul as well. It's very important for us to do that. Okay? Now, verses 5 through 8. And again, I want you to look for the good quality in Gaius in verses 5 through 8. And this one maybe a little bit more difficult, possibly, but it's there. Verses 5 through 8 it says, Beloved, thou doest faithfully whatsoever thou doest to the brethren and to strangers, which have borne witness of thy charity before the church, whom if thou bring forward on the journey after a godly sort, thou shalt do well. Because that for his name's sake they went forth, taking nothing of the Gentiles, we therefore ought to receive such that we might be fellow helpers to the truth. Notice that word there, fellow helpers. Notice again, especially in the verse, I'm going to read verses 5 and 6 again. He says, Beloved, thou doest faithfully whatever thou doest to thy brethren and to strangers, which have borne witness of thy charity before the church, whom if thou bring forth on a journey after godly sort, thou shalt do well. What is it that we notice here as a good quality in Gaius in these verses? By the way, if you see me scratching my nose, it's because allergies have been bothering me and it's itching. It's like right on the edge of like, whoo. What's a good quality we see in Gaius here in verses 5 through 8? And as you're thinking about that and read those verses, one of the really interesting things about Gaius is we don't have any indication that Gaius was the preacher, that he was even a teacher. Terry Cross, and we got him coming in at the same time, Terry Cross says generosity. Fred Clayton mentions he was full of charity. The Harts mention that he acts and serves according to truth. And so here's the thing. Here is this guy who, even though it appears he's not the teacher, he's not the preacher, he's not the pastor, he's not the shepherd, it doesn't appear that he's that person, he is involved in good, practical ministry. He is generous in his ministry to both believers in the church and to strangers. He was acting and serving, as the Harts mentioned, in accordance with truth. His heart was full of charity. He was full of generosity. It appears that he opened his heart and his home to those who were bearers of the truth. And I think that was a huge. I'm sure he'd done it to John on multiple occasions. Now, as we understand from Bible times, it was a regular thing for ministers of the gospel to travel from city to city, and for believers in the church to take them in. It was normal for strangers to travel from city to city, and for strangers to take them in. Hospitality was a very different thing in Bible times, and I understand it's different than it is today. And so application here is important for us to think about, okay? Again, think about John. He was very thankful that he was hospitable and full of charity towards those who were bearers of the truth. Again, we're going to read these verses again. He says, Beloved, thou doest faithfully whatsoever thou doest to the brethren and to strangers, which have borne witness of thy charity before the church, whom if thou bring forth on their journey after a godly sort, thou shalt do well. Because that for his name's sake they went forth. Okay, here are these people that are, for the sake of Christ, are going forth and going from city to city, and he's helping those people. And they're not trying to take anything from the Gentiles. We therefore ought to receive such that we might be, notice what he says, fellow helpers of the truth. His acts of charity, his acts of service were helping the truth and the truth bearers to go forward. Now, I understand, and please understand that I understand this. And don't take it the wrong way. This can sound very self-serving, but I think it's an important question for us to ask application-wise for this day and age, and it's this question. What are some practical ways to help those in ministry? What are some practical ways that you can help people who are bearers of the truth? How do we become, on a regular basis, fellow helpers of the truth, even if we're not the ones proclaiming the truth. Now, and obviously, I'm not saying we should be speaking lies, but as maybe the minister or the teacher or the evangelist or the missionary that again is traveling through here in very practical ways. How can you and I go ahead and start typing them out as you think of them, maybe as they come to mind? What are practical ways to help those who are in ministry, who on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis are going from place to place and proclaiming truth? How do we practically become fellow helpers of the truth? Okay, Fred Clayton just says encourage them. Yeah, but it is an important thing to remember that people who are in ministry are regular people like anybody else, and they are encouraged. They can be encouraged, and your words can help them in a mighty way, and have before. Same thing with with missionaries, communicating and encouraging them as well. And so that's one practical way. What are some other practical ways that you can think of that we could mention here? And I'll wait for maybe a few answers to pop across the screen here before we move on. The hearts mention participation. You'll never know how big of an encouragement participation is. Whether it's here on Wednesday nights, or whether it's singing in the services, or whether it's serving in a ministry. There's all sorts of things. Cassie mentions, actually we have three of them come in. Cassie, Katie, and Colleen, it looks like, are mentioned praying for them. And letting them know that you're praying for them, that you appreciate what they're doing. Again, just being encouragement in that way. Prayer is a huge thing, and as we all understand, it's one thing to come up to somebody and say, "Hey, I'm praying for you." It's a whole other thing to actually be praying for them. It is a huge one. And so, yeah, Cassie's like, "Hey, Katie, we think the same way," because they almost wrote the exact same answers there. And Colleen, it looks like, jumped in there as well. Yes, sending, especially to maybe missionaries that are in foreign fields, sending packages to them, things that they enjoy, or things that they need, or things that they miss. Yeah, even monetarily being an encouragement to them. And again, I hesitate when I ask this question, because I know it can sound self-serving, and that was not my intentions in that. Just kind of following the flow of what was happening here. And I think it's important for us to think, hey, if we value truth, we love truth, we walk in truth, we want to abide in truth, then it's important for us to be fellow helpers of the truth in very simple, practical ways. And maybe that's something for you to think about this week, and think about, hey, I want to be a fellow helper of the truth. How do I do that? And we do some of these things that we mentioned here. When Missions Month comes along, or we have a guest speaker, and we go, I know this person's go around, they're proclaiming truth, and truth is so vital in this day and age. I want to be a fellow helper of the truth. 2 John was all about fighting apostasy and not entertaining false teachers. But 3 John is about being hospitable to those who do proclaim and promote truth. And I think it's important for us to do that. Unfortunately, not everybody in this church was like Gaius. I told you we're going to look at 3 characters. Most of our time will be spent on Gaius, but we'll look at 2 other ones. The next one is this. Okay? The next one is a guy by the name of Diotrephes. Look at verses 9 and 10 together with me. Verses 9 and 10 say this. It says, I wrote unto the church, but Diotrephes, who loveth to have the preeminence among them, receiveth us not. I mean, that's polar opposite to Gaius. Verse 10. Oh, sorry, I didn't put him up here on the screen. I'll read it again. Verse 9. I wrote unto the church, but Diotrephes, who loveth to have the preeminence among them, receiveth us not. Wherefore, if I come, I will remember his deeds, which he doeth, prating against us with malicious words, and not content therewith, neither doth he himself receive the brethren, and forbiddeth them that would, and casteth them out of the church. Unfortunately, there are many churches who have someone in that church who believes it's their place to assume dictatorial power. And unfortunately, there are some pastors that have done that to their congregation. And it's important for any pastor to remember that the word minister means servant. It doesn't mean dictator. It doesn't mean controller. The word minister means servant. But sometimes it's not the pastor. Sometimes there are members of the church who think that's their place as well. And they want a place of power, and they hunger for a place of power, and they want to control things. And I know as I say that, it sounds awful, and it is something we should all be very careful to not let creep into our heart. But we also need to remember that even the disciples would argue over who would be first or who would be greatest in the kingdom. And so this is a tool Satan is constantly trying to get into the heart of those of believers and those people who are trying to follow the Lord, is trying to plant this little seed of pride, that plant this little idea of, hey, you need to step up and you ought to have some control. I want us to go back, and I want you to look at verse 9, and this is the question, and it should jump right off the page to you. What's the primary issue we see in verse 9? Ready? Write it out. Let me know in the comments. Ready? Verse 9. I wrote unto the church, but Diotrephes, who loveth to have the preeminence among them, receiveth us not. What's the major issue here? What is Diotrephes' major issue, especially in contrast to somebody like Gaius? What was the big issue here? Okay. There's really just one word that just jumps out when you read verse 9. And the Claytons mention here this idea of pride, right? He says, he loveth to have the preeminence. You know, one of the core values of Pioneer is the preeminence of God. God gets first place. And in this place, Diotrephes wanted first place. He loved to have control. He loved to have his own way. And I'm just going to tell you, as the pastor of the church, I want the members of my church to know that if we have people in our church that you see trying to wiggle their way into, and sometimes not even wiggle their way in, stomp on people to have their own way, spiritually minded people must step up and not tolerate this kind of thing. I'm not going to mention too many names, but I know of a church, a good pastor, serving the Lord, great family, doing the best they can, and somewhere along the way got blindsided by some of the people in their church and the deacons, and they got together and basically said they just didn't like what the pastor was doing. They didn't like the direct. I mean, and he's a good guy. He's a solid guy. He's a fundamental guy. I mean, he wasn't a false teacher. He wasn't going off the rails. They just snuck in behind him and said, "We don't want you here anymore. We're kicking you out." And it was just a handful of people that got in there and made that decision. Spiritually minded people need to step up and not tolerate somebody who tries to take preeminence when God should have the preeminence, right? Notice some of the things that he did. The Bible says here, he says, he receiveth us not. He wouldn't even receive John. He wouldn't even take John in. And the reason he didn't want John to come is because he knew that John would challenge him and his pride and his desire for self-gratification, that John wouldn't allow it to happen. So somehow or another, Diotrephes wouldn't even receive John into the church. In verse 10, it says this. He says, "Wherefore, if I come, I will remember his deeds which he doeth, prating against us with malicious words." In other words, he lied about John. He brought false and empty charges against John. And by the way, let me just say this. The sad reality is that this has not stopped in local churches. The sad thing is there are a lot of people that love to hear the latest juicy gossip. Can I just say, as a pastor of Pioneer, don't be one of those people. Don't be one of those people. He goes on and says, "Wherefore if I come, I'll remember his deeds which he doeth, prating against us with malicious words, and not content therewith. Neither doth he himself receive the brethren, and forbiddeth them that would, and casteth them out of the church." He rejected John's associates. Those people, even though maybe they didn't do something that Diotrephes didn't like, they were just guilty by association. I mean, he was going to multiple degrees of separation here. Oh, you're friends with John? No, can't be here. Okay. He even disciplined people who would disagree with him. And by the way, church discipline is biblical, but church discipline is not meant to be yielded as a weapon, like Diotrephes was here. Again, I told you there are three people. The first one was Gaius. The second one was Diotrephes. The last one we're going to look at tonight is a man by the name of Demetrius. Look at verses 11 through 12. And we're almost done here. Verse 11 says, "Beloved, follow not that which is evil, but that which is good. He that doeth good is of God, but he that doeth evil hath not seen God. Demetrius hath good report of all men, and of the truth itself. Yea, and we also bear record, and ye know that our record is true." You know what John says about Demetrius here? He basically says, you know what? Demetrius is an ideal model. Demetrius is somebody worthy to be imitated. He says Demetrius has a good report of all men and of the truth himself. I mean, if you go ask anybody, they'll tell you Demetrius, man, he's a good guy. But also, if you read the truth, you'll look and say, you know what, Demetrius lines up with the truth. And we'll tell you that Demetrius is a good guy as well. He's looking and he says, hey, this is a guy. This is a guy that's worthy to follow. This is a guy that we should imitate. Okay, but here's the question: do you believe? Is it right to imitate human examples? Is it right? And maybe give a Bible verse or some explanation to your answer here. Do you think it's right to imitate human examples? Yeah, the Bible tells us here he had good testimony from people. He had a good testimony from the church, from the truth, and both the church and the Word of God bore witness to his Christian life, and John did too. Okay, but is it right to imitate, or is it right to encourage others to imitate human examples? Yes, no, maybe so. Give a response or some explanation with the answer you get. And I apologize, I'm just now scrolling through some of these, and the Claytons mentioned they've been through a church split, and it is not fun, and it's not. And you know, I pray that it's something we never have to go through, and that godly people will step up and try to make things right. The Hearts mentioned that, yes, and it's they mentioned the verse I wrote in my notes as well. Paul said to believers, "Follow me as I follow Christ." Cassie mentions that God put all these stories and examples in the Bible, some good and some bad, to show us what to do and what not to do. I think there are many examples that we see in the Bible, but I don't think there's anything wrong with saying, hey, I would love to have that character trait in my life, and I would love to avoid that character trait. Again, Azariah chimes in and says the godly ones, right? Exactly. I don't want to follow, I don't want to follow all of David's examples. But there are a lot of David's examples I want to follow. I don't want to follow all of Solomon's examples. But there are some of Solomon's examples I want to follow some of those examples. Again, the Claytons chime in here. If it's what you're trying to imitate is a good trait, then yes. They also mention as long as the person is imitating God, exactly. We can learn from them, and they can help us learn how to act or handle certain situations. So I think it's important for us to understand, right? Yes, Christ We're always looking to Christ, and we want to follow his example, right? But it is, Paul said, follow me as I follow Christ. Which also is a reminder to us not just to find good examples to imitate, but it's also a reminder to us to be a good example to imitate. Because people are always watching, which brings me to another question. Ready? Here it is. What are some things that we can do to earn this same commendation? The commendation that John gives of Demetrius, he says, Demetrius hath good report of all men, and of the truth itself. And we also bear record, and ye know that our record is true. And this is just practically speaking. I don't have a list of things written here. I'm not looking for you to get, 4 out of the 5 right answers or anything. What are some things that you think practically that we can do and should do to earn this same commendation? I don't know about you, but I want to be somebody that says, that person is a person of good report. You compare that person to the truth, and he lines up. You ask anybody here, and they'll tell you that person is true, godly. He walks the line. He loves the Lord. What are some things that we can do to earn that commendation? Okay, the Claytons mentioned just maintaining our integrity, right? Not allowing anything, not allowing ourselves to be bought or had, or to be move on our principles or convictions because of something else. So maintain that integrity. The heart's mentioned to keep growing and to finish better than you started, right? And it's important for us to understand. Sometimes we think spiritual life is a trajectory that goes like this, right? But in reality, the trajectory is usually a little bit more, like this, right? But we certainly want this upward trajectory that keeps moving up, right? And so, these are just a few examples for us to I want to keep my integrity. I want to keep growing. I want to keep getting better for the Lord. Adam just jumps in here and says, make sure that your goal of success and what you're looking for in success is success in God's eyes and not in the eyes of man, because those things are going to look very, very different, right? And that's important for us to remember. As we finish out 3 John, and if you happen to write some more things, I'll look in here in a second, that it says this. It says, and by the way, it's a very similar ending to 2 John. It says, I had many things to write, but I will not with ink and pen write unto thee. But I trust I shall shortly see thee, and we shall speak face to face. Okay, just like he told the people in 2 John, he said, I'm looking forward to seeing you soon. I hope to see you soon. Then he goes on and says this. He says, peace be to thee. And by the way, I think John, when he said this, just like he did in 2 John, when he says, I hope to see you soon, was an encouragement to the believers who were serving the Lord, but is also meant as a warning to those who weren't. I also think that was a shot across the bow to Demetrius. Demetrius, I'm coming, and I'm going to see you shortly. Okay? And we shall speak face to face. That was an encouragement to Demetrius and to Gaius. But that was a shot across the bow to Diotrephes, not to Demetrius, I think I just said just a minute ago. Okay? But then he goes on and says, peace be to thee. I think those were words to Gaius and to Demetrius. Because I'm sure at this point, their hearts were distressed. I'm sure they were probably worried that maybe their church was getting ready to split because of what was going on. And he says, peace be to thee. Our friends salute thee. Greet the friends by name. And it's a very short chapter. But I think there's some very practical, helpful things for us to understand tonight. When God's people love him, and they love the truth, and they love one another, then the Spirit of God can work in that assembly to the glory of God. To love God, to love his truth, and to love one another, right? Because that's what Gaius and Demetrius did. That's not what Diotrephes did. And it was causing loads of trouble. Very simply, um, you know, can I say this? Churches need fewer Diotrephes and more Gaiuses and Demetrius. And the question we have to ask ourselves is, what am I going to be? In the local church that God has me in, which one of these guys am I going to be? Which one of these am I going to fulfill? Which one of these am I going to look like? I praise the Lord for many Gaiuses and many Demetriuses within our church. And I pray that God will protect us from people like Diotrephes. But I also pray that it's a prayer of each individual's heart. God, keep me from that. Keep me from ever wanting to have the preeminence over you, Lord, having the preeminence. And I believe God will see that, and I believe that God will honor that. In 2nd and 3rd John, John implores the people to guard truth, to walk in truth, to abide in truth, to protect it from those on the outside, and to protect it from those on the inside. Thanks for joining us in our study of 3rd John. Let me encourage you again to continue to pray for the Lord's leading as far as the building is concerned for us. And just as a heads up, for this coming Sunday and really for the next about 4 Sundays, we are being allowed to stay in the Mount Hood room there at the Camden Grove a little bit longer. But basically from here on out, it's going to be like it was this past Sunday night, where we have to set up and tear down. Because of that, we're going to do a minimal amount of setup, and so that way it's not us setting up and tearing down everything on Sundays. We'll do a minimal amount of setup. We'll do a minimal amount of tear down on Sundays. But we praise the Lord that we've been able to extend really through about mid-July, I think it is now, and really just kind of taking it little by little with them and using what they're allowing us to use. And so be prepared for that this Sunday. It's Father's Day. We hope to see you there. We'll have a gift for fathers, and we're excited about that. But we hope to see you at Pioneer this coming Sunday, and continue to pray again about what the Lord's will is for us as far as a permanent use facility. Hope you guys have a great rest of the week, and we will talk to you later.